James Degale, Andre Dirrell, this Saturday in Boston, IBF Super Middleweight title of the world. Very, very interesting fight. Two guys who I have long considered two of my favourite fighters. Two guys who I have said are the only two guys capable of giving Andre Ward a matchup at 168 pounds. Let's start with Andre Dirrell. I've been a fan of Andre Dirrell for quite some time now. He's, in my opinion, a vastly underappreciated, much maligned fighter. I hear people being extremely critical of him, saying he's got no heart, saying he took a dive in the Arthur Abraham fight, saying he's a boring fighter to watch. But this is boxing. This isn't MMA. This isn't WWE. This is a sport which relates to hitting and not getting hit. It involves the art of defence, it involves the art of movement, it involves the art of a jab. And for me, Andre Dirrell has absolutely got that nailed in terms of his approach. Yeah, if you look at the first few rounds of that Carl Froch fight, and I know Froch is a slow starter, or I know Froch is a guy who tends to get outboxed by world-class fighters in the early rounds, and then work his way into a fight later and wear an opponent down. However, if you have any question over Andre Dirrell's ability, just watch the first 2 or 3 rounds of that Carl Froch fight. His jab, his movement, his elusiveness, it really is top class. And I was very impressed with him since then. In the fight with Arthur Abraham, I know that fight ended in controversial circumstances, but let's ignore the ending. Up till that point, it was a dominant performance by Andre Dirrell. I know Arthur Abraham isn't high on many people's pound-for-pound list, but he's a long-term champion. He's been highly rated as a top-level fighter for a very, very long time. And we see a performance from Andre Dirrell of pure dominance. Dirrell, he's a fast guy, he's a big guy, he's athletic, he can switch hit, he's got adequate power without being exceptional, an excellent jab, he's solid defensively. Really is a lot to like about Andre Dirrell. And for me, all of this stuff about him having no heart, all of this stuff about him being boring to watch, for me, if you're a fan of boxing, Andre Dirrell is a guy to take note of. James Degale, however, is also someone that I'm exceptionally high of. And let me say, I think you could almost suggest, I know it's not true factually, but you could almost suggest that both of these guys are close to being unbeaten. I did score Carl Froch Andre Dirrell fight. I did side with Carl Froch on that because of his late work. Having said that, a lot of people, including Andre Dirrell, believe that Dirrell won that fight handily, so it's controversial. James Degale, George Groves, I had actually bet on George Groves that day. I'd taken my money and staked it on George Groves to win. However, I scored the fight to James Degale. I thought whilst Groves admittedly caused Degale problems, Degale did enough work late on and probably deserved to win by 1 or 2 rounds. So there's, both guys have only lost once. Both of those losses very, very controversial. Both guys are similar in the sense that they carry power, but maybe not exceptional world-level power. They're not Golovkin, Kovalev, Wilder-style punchers. To my eye, both guys have solid defence and a solid chin. I think it's likely that this one will go the distance. Now, with James Degale, he's someone I very much buy into the theory about James Degale carrying injuries early on in his career. And the reason I buy into that is, for me, the obvious thing to look at an injury is, does a fighter's performance change? Now, with Manny Pacquiao, he's claiming an injury for the Mayweather fight, but we didn't necessarily see differences in his approach because of this supposed injury. That makes me dubious. With James Degale, he said that he's had an injury in the past, it's now cleared up, and look what happened ever since. He's been facing possibly a better level of opposition, Brandon Gonzalez, Marco Antonio Periban, and he's been chopping them down by trees, knocking them out. For me, I believe that James Degale has improved. I believe that an injury earlier on in his career is very possible, and he's now being able to set his feet a bit more, land a bit more, with a bit more power. So I buy into James Degale. I also buy into Andre Dirrell. What I would say in terms of picking a winner in this fight, Andre Dirrell's best performances are the loss to Carl Frost and a win against Arthur Abraham. Now, both of those guys are high-level operators. Both of those guys are guys who, I would admit, have achieved more in their professional careers than James Degale. However, they're a certain type of fighter. They're come forward. They're aggressive. They're perhaps not the slickest, most technical boxers. They're not the best movers. Carl Frost is not the best defensive fighter. To an extent, they're predictable. And I don't want to be overcritical, but to an extent you could say that they're two guys who are fighters, brawlers, scrappers. I know they're a lot more than that, but essentially that is where we have seen Andre Dirrell at his best. In matchups where he has been the technician, in matchups where he has been the mover, where he has been the jabber, and he's been able to kind of circle opponents and run rings around them with his hit and move tactics. Now with James Degale, I don't think those tactics are going to be as effective, because I view Degale as a lot more awkward and a lot less predictable than Carl Frost. James Degale is a southpaw himself. He's very awkward in the stance that he takes up. He moves better than Frost. He moves better than Abraham, in my opinion. He's more elusive. He's less predictable. I think James Degale fights at awkward angles, bends, leans. As I say, he's got a southpaw thing. Even his very stance is odd. For me, because of the way James Degale positions himself and fights and his style, Andre Dirrell isn't going to be able to have effect using the same techniques that he did against Frost and Abraham, because I don't see Degale being there. I don't see Degale being as hittable as those two guys, and I see Degale, quite frankly, being more technically astute, I guess, than Frost and Abraham. I mean, let's not forget James Degale, for all his faults, is an Olympic gold medalist. He's got that amateur pedigree. He's got that technician background himself, and he's more of a boxer, I would say, than a Frost and an Abraham. Now, clearly the same could be said for Andre Dirrell. He's not a guy who's just going to be there waiting for Degale to hit him. He's a guy with a defensive game, with technical ability. But I think Degale has advantages in certain areas. I feel that Degale may have a slight advantage in terms of power. Just because at the elite level, in terms of his biggest fights recently, Degale's been scoring the KOs, whereas Andre Dirrell, at his highest level, in the Frost fight, he was doing well, but he didn't look like a power puncher. Similar in the Abraham fight. He went the distance, I think, with Derek Edwards recently. I think Degale has a slight edge in power. I also think Degale has a big edge in inside game. I could see Andre Dirrell trying to fight on his back foot in this fight, trying to use his range, trying to use his longer jab and his reach and his bigger frame to effect. But I think James Degale will look to vary the distances in this fight, and he is a guy with an elite inside game. And again, when I say an elite inside game, it's also an awkward inside game. He kind of throws this bizarre looping hook to the body, and this kind of cross between a hook and an uppercut. He's so unpredictable. He's swinging it with the widest punches you're likely to see a class fighter throw. Overhand punches, jab cross combinations where the cross even gets thrown like a hook, or your overhands where it comes out the back. He's awkward to the extreme. He's unpredictable, and I feel he's got more tools in his toolbox and more weapons in his arsenal, to use all the cliches, than Andre Dirrell coming forward. I think Dirrell will be on the back foot fighting a smart matchup that may work against, in my eyes, a less sophisticated fighter like Arthur Abraham. But I don't think Degale is going to be there to be hit and to be jabbed and to be outboxed in the same way Abraham was. And I feel that James Degale's come forward aggression and variety and awkwardness and unpredictableness may give him the edge in this fight. Let me also talk about momentum. Andre Dirrell, he's a guy who, in my opinion, hasn't fulfilled his potential. He's a guy who, in my opinion, should have at some stage been a pound-for-pound top 10, top 20 level fighter. I think he's that good. But the guy's been through long periods of inactivity. He's in his 30s. It's been a very long time since he's fought a top 10 fighter in any division. You could say that perhaps Andre Dirrell hasn't got the momentum and the sort of direction in his career that James Degale has. I know it's in Dirrell's backyard, but I think Degale, I've just got a feeling that it's his time now. He's got a really good team behind him. His performances have been getting better and better. He's 29 years old. He's been fighting an increased level of opposition recently and performing even better than we're used to. And I really do think it's his time. I think the momentum is with him, and this isn't an occasion where a Brit's going over to America like Lee Purdy or Rees or one of those guys where we're expecting to lose. Degale is going over there to take the title, and I just think he's got more to his arsenal than Dirrell. And as I say, I'm a huge Dirrell fan. I like Dirrell. I think he's vastly underappreciated. But I think Dirrell's going to be on his back foot trying to outbox a guy like he did with Arthur Abraham. And I think Degale has so many different tools and so many different facets to his game from Arthur Abraham. I think Degale is so much harder to hit. His movement is so much better. His defensive stance is so much better. The angles he uses are so much better. I think offensively he's got much more of an inside game than Dirrell. Much more power than Dirrell. He's been more active than Dirrell. I just think it's Degale's time. I like both guys. It's not a fight that I would stake my life savings on, because I rate Dirrell very highly. And I think Dirrell, it will go the distance. Obviously, it's in America on an Al Heyman card. Dirrell's the kind of fighter who starts well, looks good early on. It is a fight that could be close on the scorecards and could go the other way. So it's not a fight I'd stake my life savings on. But I do think Degale deserves to be favourite. I do think Degale will likely win this fight, and I'm going for Degale points. Let me know your thoughts. As always, keen to discuss. Many thanks for watching.